Stephen Strange was a man obsessed with control. For years, he built his life around precision and mastery, the kind that only comes from years bent over a surgical table, hands as steady as stone. In his world, lives were measured in millimeters, and mistakes weren't an option. His skill was legendary, his arrogance even more so. But that life, neat and calculated, ended in a flash of glass and twisting metal. One rainy evening, winding along a narrow mountain road, Stephen's car skidded off the edge. When he awoke in the hospital, the world was different. His hands, once the tools of miracles, were no longer his own. They shook, trembled, refused to obey the commands he'd taken for granted. Every surgery, every expert, every experimental treatment failed him. His fortune evaporated, paying for impossible cures. Frustrated and desperate, Stephen drifted through the days and nights. His world became little more than the echo of what he'd lost until he heard whispers of something called Kamartaj, a place somewhere in Nepal where healing went beyond science. Strange, always a skeptic, wasn't one to chase rumors. But with nothing left to lose, he bought a one-way ticket and followed the trail of stories, bribes, and hope. The journey wasn't just physical. He arrived in Kathmandu, haggard and hollow, searching for a place few claimed to have seen. The city's crowded alleys and crowded scents were overwhelming. At first, every door closed in his face. Some simply shook their heads, others laughed. But there were those who saw the desperation in his eyes and gave him just one more clue. A voice in the darkness saying, "Try here," until at last Strange stood before a humble, unmarked door. He hesitated, hesitancy unknown to the man he once was, and then knocked. A young man opened the door and led him through labyrinthine corridors. Whatever Strange had expected, it wasn't this. No marble halls, no crystal chandeliers, just tea and incense, and the feeling of something ageless humming in the walls. He was introduced to Master Mordo, a stern, watchful guardian. Strange delivered his plea. He needed his hands back. He needed his life. Mordo listened, then nodded. "Wait here." The waiting itself felt like another test, and then she entered. The Ancient One. Small, quiet steps. The calm certainty of someone who didn't need to command respect. It was simply given.
Oh.
Her presence filled the room, yet she wasn't physically imposing. She gazed at Stephen not with pity, but with understanding. Stephen presented his case, laying out every rational explanation, every failed surgery. His insistence that science held the answers. The Ancient One listened with a gentle patience that unmoored him. She spoke at first of healing, but not in terms he wanted. She offered tea, and then stories of men healed, not just in body, but in spirit. He called it superstition. She called it reality, unseen. He demanded proof. The Ancient One responded not with words, but with action. With a wave of her hand, she separated his astral form from his body, suspending his consciousness in a realm beyond imagination, colors and stars and infinite space. For the briefest moment, Strange experienced existence, unmoored from flesh. When he snapped back, gasping, the world was new. His reality had changed. It was there in that simple, incense-laden room that Stephen Strange first truly met the Ancient One, not just as a healer, but as a teacher who challenged everything he believed. Their first meeting was less about answers and more about questions. Could he accept a world not ruled by science? Was he willing to surrender control to something greater? At first, he resisted. His skepticism was a fortress. The Ancient One stood unshaken. She explained that healing could not begin until the ego surrendered. She reminded him of his search, how far reason and will had led him, and how much further he had to go. "You were looking for a simple fix," she told him, "but your broken hands are only the beginning." The meeting stretched on. The Ancient One showed him glimpses of magic, of power, of responsibility. She challenged him to open his mind, to embrace not certainty, but the unknown. For Stephen, the moment became more than a meeting, it was a mirror. He saw what he'd become. He saw, if only for a second, what he might yet be. It was here that Stephen's journey as a sorcerer began. The first meeting with the Ancient One was in tea, just a step toward healing. It was the beginning of transformation. He arrived in Kamartaj, desperate for a cure. He left that room, hours later, desperate for understanding. Did this meeting. The world for both Stephen Strange and those who came after changed forever.